Test, 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 test. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Well, Jimmy and James, I'm going to make you a tape. You know, can't read or write. Got 4 years of college, 12 years of high school, can't read or write. Ain't that the fifth? But I thought I'd sit down here in the garage and make you a tape. Didn't have nothing else to do, and ain't nothing like sitting down here talking to yourself. Listen, I'm going to play James a tape about the hunter. If he wants to listen to that, well, just let him go. And then I'll do some other stuff later, okay? Here we go. I'm going to let y'all hear it. I'm going to let you hear it. Just in a minute when it comes on. Just in a minute. Here we go. I'm going to play this.
You know, I hate to brag myself and everything, but I do hold a world record. I think it's a world record for killing the most game with one bullet. Yeah, and it's kind of an accident the way it happened. I mean, I didn't set out to set a record or nothing, but I just was going hunting one day, and I got home, and my friend of mine had borrowed my gun. I didn't have a gun, but our family had an old, long gun hanging up over the mantel, been passed down from generation to generation. And I dug through the drawers there, and I found one old bullet. And I told my mother, I said, I just got one bullet to this gun. I think I'll go shoot it anyway. And she said, well, look, since you just got one bullet, said, you know that old cypress stump down there that's hollow? Said, can you cut that thing off, put me a bottom on it, make me a flour barrel out of it? And I said, well, I guess I could. So on my way down there, I hooked the sled onto the horse, and I pulled the sled down there. And before I started sawing on that old stump, I decided I'd stake out my goose net. So I staked my goose net out and threw a little corn in there and went to sawing on that stump. And I'd been sawing there for a little while, and I heard a racket, and I looked up, and you're not going to believe this, but that goose net was full of geese. You couldn't get another one in there. Now, I gathered up all the corners of that goose net, and when I got them all gathered up, all them geese started trying to fly at the same time, and you ain't going to believe this, but they picked me up right off the ground. I held on till I got to the top of the trees, and I got scared, and I said, I got to let this thing go. So I dropped off, and you're not going to believe this, but I fell down in a hollow tree about that big around and sunk up in the honey neck deep, stuck in there. I never seen so much honey, and I looked up, and I could see blue sky, but all of a sudden it turned black, and what it was a big old bear come down there to get that honey, and I thought, oh, Lord. But when he got down there to me, I thought real quick, and I grabbed him by the tail and goosed him, and he jerked me up out of there, and we drug me all the way to the top. And I gave him a shove when we got out there, and the darn thing fell and broke his neck right at the bottom of that tree. Now, look, this old tree was right beside the creek, and I had that honey all over me, so I thought I'd jump in there and wash it off. So that's what I did. I jumped in the water, started washing it off, and all of a sudden my collar started choking me, about to choke me to death. And what it was about a 12-pound catfish got down my collar. And he was about to choke me, and all of a sudden my top collar button popped off there and killed a partridge sitting on the bank. So I got my 12-pound catfish, my partridge, and put him on the sled with the bear and put the honey in that barrel, and I was getting ready to go, and I heard a racket, and I looked up, and there was all them geese hung in about an 80-foot pine tree. And I thought, well, I'll just cut this joker down. So I cut it down, and when it fell way out yonder, when I went to go get those geese, you're not going to believe this, but there's 2 buck deer sleeping in that pine thicket, and that tree fell on both of them. I had 2 buck deer, and there was 21 geese in that net, and I put them on the sled with a 12-pound catfish, a partridge, and a bear, and the honey, and I had me a load. And I was getting ready to go, and I heard a little racket, and I looked up, and there's 2 turkeys landed on the same limb. So I got that gun. By the time I got it loaded, there's 3 more done landed. There's 5 of them. And I took aim, and just as I shot, I stepped in a stump hole, missed every one of them. But you ain't going to believe this. That bullet hit 3 trees, ricocheted 3 times, and come back around and got all 5 of those turkeys. And that old gun was so old, that hammer blew off when I shot it and killed a swamp rabbit standing there behind me. So I got my swamp rabbit and my 5 turkeys and put them on the sled with the 21 geese and the 2 buck deer and a 12-pound catfish and a bear and a partridge and all that honey, buddy, and I had a load. And I slapped that horse on the rear end, and just as he went to pull, he broke both the trace chains on that sled. And I thought, oh, Lord, what am I going to do? And I thought real quick, and I said, I'll just skin these deer, make some rawhide straps. So that's what I did. I put them rawhide straps on the sled and slapped that horse on the rear end again, and here we go to the house. And I never looked back. And you ain't going to believe this. We got to the house, and I looked back, and that rawhide had been stretching all that time and left that meat down there in the bottom. Boy, I was mad. I just hung that harness on the stump and went on to bed. But look at here. Y'all ain't going to believe this. I got up the next morning, about 10 o'clock, the sun had come out and dried that rawhide and had sucked that sled up out of that bottom to the house. And if we had more time, I'd tell you about that hunt when I had 2 bullets.
I bet James will enjoy that. Well, I'm going to play you a tune now. Well, let's see what else we can tell you. First thing I'm going to tell you, sure enjoyed that 4th of July 54 anniversary beans and mashed potatoes and beef and fresh tomatoes out of the garden and hot onions and everything. I was just too full to eat my cake and ice cream. Can I come back and get that later? Well, Tell you what, it's about 90 down here in the garage, but man, I just had to do something. I had to get outside. I was going to tell you my John Dunn joke, if y'all could stand it. Well, see, this little old lady here in Fort Worth had a neighbor that had an 18-wheeler, and she walked over one time and says, "Hey, do you ever take that truck up there to New York City?" Said, "Well, I sure do, going tomorrow." He says, "Well, I've got a boy up there, and he won't call or write. Would you look him up?" And I sure will. "What's his name?" Said, "John Dunn." So he gets the truck, and he goes up New York City and starts down the street looking for John Dunn. And the first building he come up on was Dunn and Bradstreet. He said, "Boy, I bet he works in there." So he walks in there and asks that lady, says, "Y'all got a John in here?" She says, "Yeah, down the hall, second door on the right." And he walked over there and opened the door, and the guy's pulling his pants up. Said, "Are you done?" Says, "Yeah, we'll call your mama right now." I know y'all heard that. Y'all name that, James gets a cigar. Well, I'm going to play you one here that where you ought to be on the 4th of July, Home Sweet Home. Well, I guess that's enough of that. I tell you, I'm so full I can't hardly blow this heart, and I'm out of practice too. Hope y'all can stand this. You know, I used to go down to Darlene's and go see Granny, and that was Every's mother, and Jimmy knowed her. Well, I brought her one of these TCJC caps, and we sat out on the front porch, and I even brought her a French harp. And boy, she could play that thing, so she and I'd get out on the front porch down there in the country and play. She loved to let's gather at the river. Well, I thought I'd try that. Yeah, when we were younger, about 40, 50 years ago, I bet you we used to dance to this and put your little foot. Y'all, I bet y'all remember that one. Well, I'll say, you know, over there in Fort Worth there on 820 one time, there was a guy skating down the 820 there on roller skates. Well, a guy in a Cadillac come along, he stopped and said, "Man, what are you doing?" This guy, he says, "Well, I'm skating across Texas. I'm on the way to El Paso." He said, "Well, I am too." Says, "By the way, why don't I help you?" Says, "Take this rope and tie around your waist, tie it to the bumper to this Cadillac." Says, "I'll help you along." Says, "By the way, here's a whistle." He said, "If I get going too fast, you just blow this whistle." And so he got on there, and man, he started down the road. And of course, the guy in the Cadillac, he forgot that guy was back there on roller skates. And the highway patrol sat down there, and he radioed in and said, "I need my 2-week vacation right now." He said, "Why? What's the matter out there?" He said, "Well, there's a Cadillac going down the road 70 miles an hour down here, and a guy on a roller skates blowing a whistle trying to pass him." Boy, that's Reader's Digest. Well, I'll think of another. You know, they're always trying to put 3 or 4 people up in one of them astronaut things, go up yonder and stay a year or two, and so they picked an American, a Japanese, and a Russian. before they left, they told these three guys, says, tell you what now, says, you can take 125 pounds of personal belongings with you if you like to. And so the American said, well, my wife weighs that. Can I take her? Sure. So the Japanese, he said, well, I've always wanted to learn Greek books, Greek language. He says, can I take 125 pounds of Greek books? Oh, yeah. So the Russian said, well, I like Havana cigars. I'd like to take 125 pounds of cigars. I said, okay. So they went up and stayed a while, about a year or so, and here they come back. Well, American, he stepped off the ship, and he had a baby boy in each hand. And that Japanese, he got up on the stage, and he talked in Greek for 2 hours. The Russian stepped off the ship with a frown on his face and a cigar in his mouth, says, anybody got a match? I thought that's pretty good. I was reading that in Reader's Desk one time. You know, there in Fort Worth, Texas, pretty close to where we live down there on 820 Northwood, they had an old steam engine train down there and had about 4, 5, 6 coaches on it, not air conditioned or nothing like that. And it stayed parked down there at the stockyards. And it was called the Transler. Well, our Sunday school teacher up over Joe Sullivan one time, he took his grandkids and had to pay $8. He said, boy, that was a rip-off. That all they did was make the rounds of Fort Worth out in the outskirts and saw nothing but trees and weeds. But that old train, I'll try to show you about how he went. It really didn't sound like that. I just made all that up. Whoopee. Well, let's see now. Y'all are sure nice friends to have us old folks out like that. And, man, aren't we glad we got air conditioning. Called old Steve again about my mowing. He said, oh, I'll be there tomorrow. I'll be there Saturday. I said, well, you going to mow it on the 4th of July? I said, well, that's just another day to him. Well, it's another day to me. Unless somebody calls and hollers ice cream or something. Whatever. Well, let's see now. What else am I going to say? I better shut it off till I think up something here. I'm going to play you another tune. Well, I bet I done played that. You know, I got to tell you this here joke about this here black preacher. Well, he lost his big black felt hat. He said, boy, when I get up that pulpit in front of that audience, I'm going to get to tell them the 10 Commandments about stealing and about this and about that. And when he got to adultery, he said, that's about committed adultery. He said, oh, I know where I left that hat. Oh, boy. You know, they had a new preacher come to this little town, you know, and he walked up. He said, well, I believe I'll get out and visit some of the people. He knocked on the door, and the lady says, well, Conway Twitty will come right on in. Oh, no, I'm not Conway Twitty. I'm the new preacher. He went on down 2 or 3 other doors, you know, and knocked on the door, and everybody'd say the same thing. Well, Conway Twitty. So he walked to the one door, you know. Little old cute blonde come to the door with a bikini on. She says, well, Conway Twitty. He says, hello, darling. I bet y'all remember that. Well, I'm sitting here watching the traffic go by, and everybody's wanting me to come up there and play some Skip-O or some dominoes or something. So it won't be long, I'll have to go. Now let me think of something else here. Oh, I tell you this one. This Yankee, he come down here and says, all I've heard about Texas is that this beer is the 4 Bs. That's beer, belt buckles, boots, and barbecue. So he walked down there in the Cattleman's restaurant, you know, down there in Fort Worth, and he ordered a steak. Well, they brought him one out there and looked like it's about 4 pounds. He finally ate the whole thing. Well, they said, you got a beer? Said, yeah. They brought him about a gallon of beer, and he drank that. Says, you got a restroom? Said, yeah, down the hall, second door on the right. And well, instead of turning second door on the right, he turned left on that door and fell in the swimming pool. And he says, don't flush it, don't flush it, don't flush it. Y'all, I tell you, oh, Lord, nothing like laughing at your old jokes and sitting down here talking to yourself. You know, I got to tell you this one. This Aggie and his friend was sitting outside there, and they was having their lunch after being on the job there, and Aggie looked over and said, what you got in your hand? He said, it's a thermos bottle. He said, what in the world is a thermos bottle? He said, oh, it's something you can keep hot in or something cold in. So the next day he looked over and said, hey, Aggie, you got your thermos bottle? I said, sure did. He says, what you got in it? He says, 2 cups of coffee and 2 popsicles. I hope y'all don't know no Aggies. Oh, Lordy. Well, there's 3 guys sitting up on top of a 17-story building. One of them was white, one of them was Mexican, one of them was an Aggie. And they're going to open their lunch boxes to eat up there, 17 stories in the air. Well, this white man, he says, I'll tell you what, said, I've never liked fried chicken. Said, if there's fried chicken in this basket again, in this box, I'm going to jump off this building. So that sure enough was, he jumped off the building. Well, the Mexican, he says, well, I never did like enchiladas and tacos and all that kind of stuff. He says, if there's in there, I'm going to jump. So he jumped too. He said, it was in there. Aggie said, well, I never did like peanut butter sandwiches either. He said that, and he opened it up. Boy, there was peanut butter sandwiches in his lunchbox. Boy, he jumped off. Well, the next day at the funeral parlor, the white lady says, I can't understand my husband doing that. Said, he always liked fried chicken. And the Mexican says, well, I never understood mine. Said, he always liked tamales and enchiladas, stuff like that. I can't understand that. And the Aggie's wife says, well, I sure don't understand mine. Said, he makes his own lunch. Ooh, Lord. Well, I'll tell you what. Y'all remember Mission Impossible? Well, tell you, when you listen to this, or some of it, this tape will destroy itself in 3 seconds or throw it in the wastebasket.